Hey guys, tonight we're stepping onto a world that never sees the light of day. You're drifting on a rogue planet, a cosmic orphan flung away from its parent star, swallowed by the endless dark. The silence here isn't like the quiet of your bedroom at night, where maybe you hear the hum of a fridge or the tick of a clock. No, this silence is absolute. You could scream, and the frozen winds wouldn't carry it anywhere, because sound doesn't travel through the vacuum of space. Out here, your voice would be nothing but a puff of frozen air. And let's be honest, you probably won't survive this one. But don't worry, that's why we're imagining it instead of actually booking flights. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling generous, drop a comment with your location and the local time. I love knowing where in the world or galaxy you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes, and you're already standing on the surface of this rogue world. The ground beneath your boots is black rock, cracked and brittle, as if the planet has been in mourning ever since it was cast away from its parent sun. The horizon isn't golden with dawn. It's just a smear of distant starlight, faint pinpricks scattered across an infinite canvas. The Milky Way looks sharper here than it ever did from Earth, like someone dusted diamonds across a sheet of velvet. You've never seen the galaxy so clearly. And yet, the beauty feels heavy, because you know why it's visible. There's no sunrise coming to wash it away. The air, or what little of it clings here, burns your lungs with a thin, bitter chill. You can't breathe for long. That's one of those obvious truths. Humans aren't made for this kind of exile. The temperature drops far below anything Earth could offer, hundreds of degrees below freezing. If you poured out your water bottle, the liquid would crystallize instantly, falling like shattered glass. It's the kind of cold that doesn't just bite. It gnaws, like an endless hunger trying to hollow you out. Still, in this nightmare, your curiosity pushes you onward. Each step crunches against frosted basalt, and you imagine how this planet once had warmth. Billions of years ago, it circled a parent sun, maybe with gentle breezes, maybe even oceans. Then something catastrophic happened. A close gravitational encounter with another giant world, or maybe a brush with the star's death throes, and the planet was flung out into the void like an abandoned child. Astronomers still argue whether most rogue planets are born from such violence, or if some formed out here in the abyss, alone from the start, never knowing sunlight. Either way, the result is the same. A wanderer without a home. You look up again, straining to see the nearest star. It glimmers faintly, no warmer than a firefly half a galaxy away. It will never rise, never chase the shadows. That's the hardest part to accept. On Earth, you can always wait for morning. Here, there is no morning. Just the same endless night, stretching for eternity. Imagine explaining that to your circadian rhythm. It would file for resignation immediately. And yet, even in this desolation, you find signs of persistence. At your feet, the cracked surface reveals veins of frozen water, like pale scars etched into the rock. Beneath those scars, there may still be warmth, deep in the mantle, where radioactive decay keeps the core faintly alive. Geothermal vents might simmer below, hidden seas trapped under layers of ice, as if the planet guards its last secret. Some scientists suspect those hidden oceans could host life, microbes clinging stubbornly to heat, like squatters in a building the universe forgot to condemn. That's your quirky tidbit for tonight. Life has a way of refusing eviction notices. As you walk, the horizon wavers with strange light. Not sunlight, never that, but auroras, shivering green and purple across the sky. You tilt your head back in wonder. These displays aren't caused by solar winds, like Earth's northern lights, but by the bombardment of cosmic rays and the planet's magnetic field, if it still has one. It's eerie, ribbons of color dancing in a sky that should be empty, like a ghostly encore after the star has left the stage. You pause, wrapping your arms tight against your chest. It's absurd, but you almost miss mosquitoes, the little buzzing nuisances of summer nights. At least they were proof of life. Here, the silence and stillness press down like an invisible weight. Your only company is the crunch of frost beneath your boots and the occasional shiver of aurora overhead. That's when it hits you. This planet isn't dead. It's sleeping. Deep below, In caverns warmed by the core, there could be entire ecosystems, blind and alien, drifting through dark seas. You'll never see them, of course, but the idea tickles your imagination. Somewhere in that abyss, strange creatures might be wondering about the surface the way you wonder about them. You stop, take a deep breath, and exhale into the cold. The vapor crystallizes instantly, a tiny cloud of snowflakes swirling away from your lips. And in that moment, you realize something strange. You've been cast into a place that should feel hopeless, but it doesn't. It feels humbling. A reminder that the universe isn't built to suit you, that Earth's warmth is an exception, not the rule. You stand on a world abandoned by its star, and yet it still holds mysteries, still spins on in the dark, still exists. That's the quiet triumph of physics. Even banished, the planet refuses to vanish. Your mind drifts, pun intended, to the thought of time. How long has this planet been wandering? 1,000,000 years? 1 billion? Long enough that entire civilizations could have risen and fallen on Earth, while this lonely traveler just kept going. You glance back at the stars, trying to imagine how many other rogues are out there, invisible in the dark. Some astronomers believe there may be more homeless worlds than there are stars. Picture that, a galaxy not filled with glittering suns, but with invisible wanderers, drifting silently past one another like ships with no lights on. It's the ultimate cosmic neighborhood, except nobody waves, and block parties are out of the question. You chuckle softly at that, and the sound startles you in the silence. But the humor helps. It keeps you warm, in its own way. You keep walking, boots crunching forward, deeper into the darkness. Ahead, the horizon seems to bend, as if the planet itself is urging you to keep going. You realize that tonight isn't about finding a way home. It's about learning to walk the long night without fear. Because sometimes, even in endless darkness, wonder is enough to keep you moving. The air grows thinner as you wander farther, and the weight of the night begins to press against your thoughts. You've already accepted the obvious truth, that this planet will never see a sunrise, but the idea still gnaws at you. On Earth, dawn always broke eventually, even if clouds muted the light. Here, nothing breaks the dark. It isn't just night, it's night without end. And if you let yourself think too hard about it, the concept feels heavy enough to crush you more surely than gravity. You walk until your legs ache, though the terrain doesn't really change. Jagged rock, scattered frost, the occasional frozen ridge, it all blends together in shades of charcoal and pale silver. Every now and then you glance upward, searching for something, anything, brighter than the faint constellations overhead. The stars glimmer sharp and distant, mocking you with their permanence. They remind you of an ironic truth. The universe is mostly empty, and this planet has simply joined the majority. It doesn't orbit a sun anymore. It orbits loneliness itself. Still, you keep moving. Maybe it's stubbornness, or maybe it's because standing still feels like giving up. Your boot slides across a patch of black ice, and you laugh nervously to yourself, muttering, "Yep, slip and break an ankle here, and the ambulance isn't coming." Even a joke like that feels precious in the void. Humor is warmth, and warmth is life. Somewhere overhead, another streak of aurora ripples across the heavens. Unlike Earth's polite northern lights, these are wild, jagged curtains, crackling with phantom energy. The faint hiss of charged particles brushing the planet's upper atmosphere makes you pause. You'd swear it sounds like static in your ears, though you know it's more likely your brain inventing comfort in the silence. Historians still argue whether ancient humans, staring up at the night sky, ever truly heard voices in the aurora, or if they just wanted to believe the heavens whispered back. You shuffle onward, your breath freezing the moment it leaves your lips. Without sunlight, there's no day-night cycle to tell time. Minutes, hours, and days smear together into one long, unbroken shadow. The planet spins, sure, but you can't tell. It doesn't matter when every direction looks the same. Your body craves rhythm. Sunrise, meals, sleep, repeat. Here, rhythm is gone, and your mind begins inventing its own. You start humming a silly tune just to trick yourself into marking time. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. You mumble, then catch yourself snickering. The lyrics hit different when the stars are the only source of light for the rest of eternity. The truth is, you don't realize how much you lean on light until it's gone. On Earth, Even the darkest caves carry some promise of morning outside. Here, there is no promise. Your eyes ache with the strain of adjusting, pupils dilating as wide as they can. The starlight gives you outlines, faint edges of ridges and rocks, but nothing more. You remember reading once that sailors at sea, before modern lamps, often went half-blind from staring into endless dark horizons. Maybe you'll join their company soon, becoming another statistic in the quirky list of things humans were never built for: long-term survival on planets without suns, and maybe tolerating elevator music for more than 10 minutes. Ahead, the ground dips into a shallow basin, and you stumble down the slope. The rock walls on either side glitter faintly, dusted with frost that glows in starlight. It looks almost like snowflakes caught mid-dance. You reach out, brushing a glove across the surface, and the frost shatters into tiny shards. They tinkle like broken glass as they fall. The sound is eerie, sharp against the silence, like a reminder that this world is fragile, beautiful in its own bleak way, but fragile. As you stand there, your mind wanders to the planet's history. How many eons has it been adrift? Did it once circle a star like ours, basking in warmth? Maybe alien forests once grew here, strange plants drinking in alien sunlight. Or perhaps it was always barren, and you're imagining ghosts that never existed. Scientists still debate whether rogue planets are more likely castaways or solitary births. Either way, they're survivors of violence. The galaxy doesn't hand out participation trophies. To drift endlessly means you endured catastrophe and still kept going. The planet itself becomes a metaphor. Exile doesn't always mean extinction. The cold seeps deeper now, stiffening your limbs. You stamp your feet to keep the blood moving, muttering another half-joke. If I freeze solid, at least I'll look like modern art. The silence doesn't laugh back, but your own chuckle keeps you sane. It's strange. Humor works here like a candle in the dark. Even the faintest flame feels bright when the rest of the room is pitch black. You finally crest another ridge, and the ground drops away into what looks like an endless plain of frozen dunes. They stretch on, undulating like the ocean caught mid-wave, frozen solid in some cosmic pause. The ridges sparkle faintly with ice crystals, each catching starlight like a tiny mirror. The whole vista looks alive, as if the planet's surface is breathing slowly under a sheet of frost. You stand still, breath hitching. Even in eternal darkness, beauty insists on existing. A thought hits you like a meteor. If life exists here, it would never know sunlight. Creatures would evolve eyes that see in faint heat, or maybe no eyes at all, guided only by vibrations and chemical trails. Alien beings could be drifting in underground oceans right now, thriving without a single glimpse of a sky. It makes you wonder, are humans spoiled by light? Maybe sunlight is overrated. After all, mushrooms manage fine without it, and they don't have existential crises every Tuesday. You lean down, scoop a shard of frozen rock, and roll it in your palm. It's sharp, jagged, a fragment of something bigger. You feel connected, in a way, to the planet itself. Both of you drifting, both of you without direction, both clinging stubbornly to existence in the face of absurd odds. It's a quiet solidarity. You, the fragile traveler, the planet, the eternal wanderer. Neither of you belong, yet both of you endure. The stars overhead shimmer faintly, and for a moment you imagine they blink just for you. A cosmic wink, encouraging you to keep going. And you do, one boot in front of the other, crunch by crunch, deeper into the unending dark. You keep walking until your knees feel like they've been stuffed with gravel, and still the dark stretches out in every direction. It isn't just night here. It's darkness perfected, the kind that smothers the horizon, the kind that presses down on your chest until you feel like you're carrying an invisible weight. No sunrise is waiting to save you. No cheerful blue sky hovering just beyond the curve of the earth. On this rogue planet, you live in a state of permanent midnight, and the longer you stay, the more it seeps into your bones. The cold sharpens, too. You can't even describe it as weather anymore. It's an environment actively conspiring against life. The obvious truth is that without a sun, temperatures plummet so low that even Antarctica would feel like a cozy beach holiday in comparison. If your breath crystallized before, now even your tears freeze before they can fall. You blink, and tiny crystals sting your lashes. Somewhere in the back of your head, You think. So this is what Elsa feels like 24/7. Except she had a castle. You just have basalt, frost, and the occasional bad joke echoing in your skull. You pull your jacket tighter, though you know it's useless. The heat loss is relentless, and you remember a strange tidbit from a science podcast. Your body loses warmth 25 times faster in water than in air. Out here, where frost clings to everything, you feel like you're drowning in frozen air, every breath stealing heat from you. It makes you wonder, what would a creature have to look like to survive here? Fur won't cut it. Maybe thick, fatty layers like whales. Or shells of insulating ice, cracked open only when heat is needed. Historians still argue whether early life on Earth needed sunlight at all, or if the first cells thrived on deep-sea vents. If microbes managed it there, why not here? The thought is oddly comforting. You trudge forward, following a ridge where shadows deepen, and the ground suddenly dips beneath your boots. You slide awkwardly down, landing hard on a sheet of black ice. The impact sends a jolt through your spine, but the shock also reveals something new, a faint glow under the ice. You crouch, staring, rubbing your hand across the frozen surface. The light is weak, more suggestion than illumination, but it's there, pulsing faintly, like a slow heartbeat buried under a glacier. You kneel, pressing your ear to the ice, though of course sound doesn't travel well here. Still, your imagination fills in what science denies. Maybe it's a geothermal vent, warmth from the core bubbling upward. Maybe it's chemical reactions, sparks of life happening in secret, thousands of feet below. Or maybe it's just pressure cracking the crust, friction creating ghostly light. You'll never know. But the glow is enough to break the monotony, a reminder that even without a sun, this world isn't entirely dead. You sit there a while, staring into the faint radiance, until the cold creeps too deep into your bones. Standing again, you shuffle forward, boots scraping against jagged edges. You glance upward, where the stars seem brighter now. You've stopped seeing them as distant fires and started seeing them as witnesses. They watch you trudge across the frozen world, indifferent but consistent. On Earth, you could hide from the stars behind daylight. Here, you have no such luxury. The cosmos is always watching, and you can't decide if that's comforting or terrifying. After hours, or what feels like hours, you crest another ridge and find a wide plain, so flat it looks carved by a cosmic ruler. The frost there gleams faintly, reflecting pinprick starlight like shattered glass. It's mesmerizing, like standing in the middle of a broken mirror. You shuffle across, boots crunching, until you notice something strange, cracks spider across the ice, intricate and branching, as if the planet's surface itself is drawing patterns. You crouch to examine them, running a gloved finger across the grooves. They look almost deliberate, like writing. Of course, you laugh softly at yourself. Nobody carved messages here. It's just physics, stress fractures, thermal contraction, pressure from within. And yet, for a fleeting second, you can't shake the feeling that the planet is trying to speak to you. It's a silly thought, but silly thoughts keep you sane out here. You mutter, "Well, buddy, if you're trying to chat, at least use Comic Sans. I'm not in the mood for hieroglyphics." The frost, unamused, says nothing. The sheer desolation begins to sink in again. You realize that without a sun, time itself feels slippery. You have no reference point, no dawn or dusk, no rhythm to lean on. Your body starts betraying you. You're tired but not sure if it's time to sleep, hungry but unsure if a day has passed. Humans are wired to light. Without it, you're drifting just like the planet, caught in a perpetual limbo. That's another truth. Survival is as much psychological as physical. And this endless dark is the cruelest trick of all. Still, you refuse to stop. You keep walking, muttering small jokes to yourself, thinking of weird comparisons. You wonder if penguins would approve of this planet, or if they'd unionize against management for losing the sun. You wonder what your old smartphone clock would say, if it could even find a signal here. Day 14, still dark. Not exactly helpful. Eventually, the horizon shifts again, and you spot a jagged mountain rising against the starlit backdrop. It's huge, sharp-edged, like the teeth of some cosmic beast jutting upward. You feel a shiver, part awe, part fear. The mountain looks alive, though you know it's just basalt and ice. Still, you decide to climb, hoping for perspective. Each step crunches, slips, and aches, until finally you crest a ledge halfway up. From there, the view stretches endlessly. Plains of frost, glowing cracks, a canopy of indifferent stars. You've never seen a vista so beautiful and so hopeless at once. You lean against the cold rock, chest heaving, and a strange calm floods you. Maybe this is what eternity feels like. Quiet, endless, cold, and yet somehow peaceful. You're not meant to survive here, but that doesn't mean you can't exist here, even for a moment. And in that moment, under the eternal night sky, you feel less like a visitor and more like part of the drift. Your boots scrape against stone as you descend from the ridge, every step echoing a reminder that even in this desolate place, gravity still holds you firm. You might be in the middle of nowhere, floating through a starless void, but gravity hasn't abandoned you. That's the obvious truth tonight. No matter how far a planet drifts from its sun, its own gravity doesn't just shrug and quit. It clings tightly, pulling everything, ice, rock, atmosphere, and unlucky travelers, toward its core. You can feel it pressing through your soles, a quiet insistence that you belong to this surface, whether you like it or not. It's strange how comforting that grip feels. On Earth, gravity is just background noise. You don't notice it unless you try to jump off a couch. But here, where everything else is alien, the steady tug beneath your feet feels like the one familiar handshake. You mutter aloud. Well, at least something around here still plays by the rules. The planet, dignified as ever, doesn't respond. You keep walking, across a plateau where the ground ripples with frozen ridges like wrinkled paper. Each rise and dip reminds you that this world still flexes and shifts, that tectonic forces are alive beneath the crust. A quirky tidbit bubbles up from memory. Even tiny moons in our solar system, like Europa or Enceladus, boast enough gravity to tug oceans beneath their ice. If small rocks can pull seas into existence, this rogue giant beneath your boots could cradle entire hidden oceans, locked away in the dark. The idea hums in the back of your mind. Gravity here isn't just prison bars. It might be life's last hope. The terrain grows rougher. Jagged cliffs jut upward, their edges sharp as glass. You reach out, brushing a glove across the rock face. It's basalt, hardened from ancient lava flows, frozen mid-eruption eons ago. Back when this planet still orbited a sun, molten rivers must have poured here, cracking and cooling, building mountains that now stand abandoned. You imagine what it felt like then, heat underfoot, skies lit by a fiery star. And then you picture the day it all ended, the gravitational chaos that ripped this world free. Historians still argue whether most rogue planets are flung away by sibling planets in crowded systems or ejected during their star's violent collapse. Either way, you know the story ends the same: banishment into endless night. You stumble on loose rock and nearly topple forward. Gravity, loyal but unforgiving, yanks you down hard. You grunt, brush frost off your knees, and mutter another half-joke. Guess even here, falling still hurts. Some things never change. You laugh softly at yourself, though the sound seems swallowed by the frozen air. Humor, once again, proves itself the duct tape of sanity. Climbing higher onto a ridge, you pause to catch your breath. From this vantage, the vast plain stretches below, etched with cracks that glow faintly, like scars across black skin. You realize the planet isn't still, it's restless. Pressure builds and releases under your feet, a silent geological heartbeat that refuses to die. Even in exile, the planet is alive in its own way, reshaping itself stone by stone, quake by quake. You close your eyes, letting the thought settle. Gravity isn't just holding you here. It's sculpting the world itself, dragging molten rock upward, carving valleys downward, shaping mountains into teeth that bite the horizon. Without sunlight, you expect lifelessness, but gravity whispers otherwise. It insists on movement, insists on order. In a universe so cold and uncaring, that insistence feels like the planet's quiet rebellion. You keep walking along the ridge until your legs ache again. Each step feels heavier, as though the planet wants to remind you of its grip. You think of Earth, where astronauts train in microgravity, floating like feathers. Out here, you'd give anything for a little weightlessness. Instead, you're tethered by invisible strings, a marionette dancing across an abandoned stage. And yet, oddly, you're grateful. Floating endlessly in the void would be worse. At least here, your feet belong to something. A memory surfaces, the way ancient sailors trusted gravity's pull to guide their compasses, how they assumed the ground would always hold. That's humanity's bias. We expect planets to behave, to stay in place around their stars, like polite dinner guests. But rogue planets throw etiquette out the window. They crash through the galaxy, dragging their gravity with them like a dark aura, tugging on comets, moons, and maybe even unlucky stars that cross their path. The sheer thought of it makes you shiver. Somewhere, another world could be feeling this same pull right before it collides. The silence around you deepens. You sit on a frost-crusted boulder, staring up at the indifferent stars. You think about how many rogue planets must be wandering unseen, each one a lonely gravity well, tugging at space as they pass. Scientists estimate there may be more of them than stars. Imagine that, an invisible army of dark worlds, silent and cold, drifting through the cosmos like ghosts. They don't shine, they don't call attention to themselves, they just pull. That's their only voice. You exhale, watching the vapor crystallize and vanish. A wry smile tugs at your lips. Gravity, the only friend that won't ghost you in the void. It's a bad pun, but you laugh anyway. The sound echoes against the ridge, carried nowhere, but it makes you feel less alone. Standing again, you brush frost from your gloves and press onward. The ground quakes faintly beneath your boots, a deep rumble rolling through the crust. It's subtle, almost like a sigh. You freeze, half in fear, half in awe. Somewhere far below, the planet's molten heart still stirs. And you realize gravity isn't just holding you. It's holding everything, keeping the world's insides from spilling into the void. Even in exile, even without sunlight, this wandering planet refuses to fall apart. As you continue across the ridge, the thought lingers. Gravity is both jailer and savior. It pins you down, but it also keeps the world whole. It holds oceans beneath ice, keeps atmospheres from bleeding away, keeps mountains tall and valleys deep. In its quiet, invisible way, gravity ensures this dark world endures. And for tonight, that's enough to keep you walking. The ground dips gradually until you find yourself descending into a shallow valley, the walls glittering faintly with frost that catches starlight like scattered gemstones. The air feels sharper here, as if even the thin atmosphere has grown brittle. You pause, leaning against the ridge, and your mind drifts to the possibility of what lies beneath. The obvious truth is this: surface conditions are lethal, but deep below, hidden from the killing frost, oceans may stir. You shuffle forward, boots crunching, until the frost underfoot gives way to a sheen of solid ice. It's dark, black as obsidian, yet smooth as glass. When you kneel and place your palm against it, you imagine what lies beneath. Kilometers of frozen crust, and below that, liquid seas warmed not by sunlight, but by the planet's own heat. Geothermal energy, the slow decay of radioactive elements, and residual warmth from the planet's violent birth still simmer down there. Against all odds, they create pockets of liquid water in a universe that otherwise looks hostile. It's not just speculation. Even in our solar system, places like Europa, Ganymede, and Enceladus hide oceans beneath their icy shells. And those moons orbit far from the sun, yet still maintain seas where life could cling. If they can do it, why not this rogue planet? In fact, some scientists argue rogue planets may outnumber habitable stars, each one a potential cradle for life. That's a fringe tidbit for you. Life in the galaxy might not glow under suns, but lurk in hidden abysses. Imagine, the majority of alien ecosystems could be locked under ice, unknown, invisible, silent travelers in the dark. You crouch lower, staring into the frozen black mirror. Your reflection shimmers faintly, distorted by cracks running beneath the surface. For a dizzy moment, you think you see movement down there, like shadows drifting slowly, as if something swims in the liquid beneath. You blink hard, and it's gone. Probably just the play of light, or your brain giving you a mercy hallucination to keep you entertained. Still, the thought lingers. If creatures lived down there, what would they look like? Your imagination runs wild. Blind swimmers, sensing the world through vibrations. bodies soft and flexible, adapted to endless pressure. Maybe bioluminescent, glowing faintly like lanterns in the dark. You picture them gliding past hydrothermal vents, feeding off chemical energy, a mirror of Earth's deep-sea creatures. Shrimp without eyes, crabs that taste metal, worms taller than you, creatures that flourish without ever seeing the sun. Historians still argue whether sunlight was ever necessary for life on Earth's beginnings, or if life's first sparks were lit at those same vents. If that's true, then creatures beneath your boots are less alien and more cousins you'll never meet. You tap the ice gently, as if knocking on a door. "Anybody home?" you whisper. The sound doesn't travel, of course, but the gesture feels oddly reverent. You half expect something to tap back, a polite alien greeting. "Yes, we're here." "No, we don't miss the sun." Nothing happens, but the idea makes you chuckle softly. The longer you linger, the more your mind starts piecing together the planet's secret architecture. Imagine vast oceans stretching for thousands of miles, capped by ice thick enough to block radiation, warmed by volcanic vents that never see the surface. It's almost funny. On Earth, we imagine alien worlds basking under twin suns, glowing with strange skies. But maybe the true alien utopias are buried under miles of black ice, living quietly, refusing to advertise their existence. A chill breeze schemes across your cheek, dragging you back to the surface. You stand again, shaking off the cold in your bones. The ice plain ahead glistens like a frozen mid-wave, ripples and ridges caught in silence. It looks almost too perfect, like a sculptor froze time itself. You shuffle across, listening to the hollow sound beneath your boots. Somewhere down there, oceans are alive, and you're the unwanted visitor walking across their ceiling. You can't resist the urge to whisper another joke, if only for your own sanity. If I fall through, at least I'll go viral as the first human popsicle found by aliens. The thought is absurd but comforting in its ridiculousness. Humor works best in the dark, like a tiny match keeping shadows at bay. As you walk, you think of home, of warm beaches where waves crash under golden skies. The contrast is so sharp it hurts. And yet, strangely, this hidden ocean feels more profound. On Earth, life clings to sunlight. Here, life clings to heat that has no name, no dawn, no day. It teaches you something uncomfortable. Maybe life doesn't need light. Maybe it just needs stubbornness. And stubbornness is everywhere. You stop again, looking upward. The stars will silently, indifferent. You realize that if creatures do exist beneath this crust, they will never see those stars. Their whole cosmos is the ice ceiling and the black seas below. And you, for this brief moment, are the only bridge between their world and the vast universe above. You wonder if that's how deep-sea fish would feel if they surfaced and saw the Milky Way for the first time. You press your palm to the ice one last time before moving on, a silent goodbye to whatever may dwell below. You'll never meet them, but their existence, real or imagined, changes the way you see this barren planet. It isn't just a frozen husk drifting endlessly. It's a vault, a hidden arc of possibilities, carrying life through the galaxy like seeds tucked inside a pocket. And as you trudge onward, the weight of that possibility steadies your steps. The planet may be homeless, drifting without a star, but it might also be carrying something precious, something waiting to bloom, if ever warmed again. That thought is enough to melt a little of the cold inside your chest. You leave the ice plain and tilt your head back, letting the dark pour into your eyes until the last tension drains from your shoulders. The first thing you accept, because there's no arguing with it, is the obvious truth. There is no dawn coming. No pale rim of light will creep along that horizon. No gold will spill across rock and frost. The sky is a cathedral without candles, and you are its lone parishioner, standing beneath a vault stitched with star thread. What replaces daylight is a tapestry of detail your city eyes never knew. Without a sun, there's no blue scattering to wash the canvas. The sky stays pitch, and every star wears its sharpest suit. The Milky Way isn't a band. It's a river with braided channels and whirls, as if someone swirled milk into black coffee and never stirred again. Your breath crystals drift upward like a brief, personal galaxy, then vanish. If the planet carries even a whisper of air, it keeps its voice low. There's no wind sound, only a soft hiss of frost collapsing under your boots when you shift your weight. Then, a hush of color edges into the black. At first you think your eyes are playing games, but a faint green sheen blooms along the far sky, spreads, and ripples. It's an aurora without a conductor, a curtain tugged by unseen hands. There's no solar wind here to spark it in the earthly way. Instead, cosmic rays, high-energy travelers from supernovas and distant flares, needle the upper air, ionizing whatever gases remain. A magnetosphere, if this planet still holds one, funnels the particles toward shadowed poles, painting soft ovals that wobble as the world tumbles through interstellar seas. The bands waver, dissolve, and reform, color drifting to violet, a brush of crimson, then back to green. You feel the small hairs along your neck rise, the same body wisdom that prickles in thunderstorms back home. You close your eyes, and the darkness brightens, little sparks, blinking gone pinpricks inside your eyelids. The sensation startles a short laugh out of you, because here comes tonight's quirky tidbit. Astronauts have reported these flashes in space. Phosphine set off when cosmic rays barrel straight through the retina. Who needs a light switch when the universe is happy to do home invasion on your eyeballs? You open your eyes again to the slow choreography above, soft, patient, almost sleepy in its pacing. And you think you could learn to tell time by aurora. Not hours and minutes, but moods and motions. Your first joke lands with a quiet smile. You mentally set your alarm to aurora o'clock, which, helpfully, is always. The planet itself is part of the show. A rogue world plowing through the thin mist of the galaxy builds a bow shock, where its magnetic field meets the interstellar medium, the way a ship raises a wedge of water ahead of its hull. You picture an invisible wake streaming behind you, an achingly long magnetotail feathering away into the dark. It's humbling, and a little funny, to imagine a planet with bedhead, its charged particles combed backward for millions of kilometers. Every so often the auroral oval smears, then snaps taut again, like a flag finding its wind in a place where wind barely exists. You scan for meteors and wait. On Earth, they ride dust trails left by comets around the sun. Here, debris fields are rare, but not impossible. Minutes, hours, slide by before a faint spark appears high overhead. It fattens into a brief needle of light and scorches a silent path, a whisper streak that fades so quickly you doubt it happened. You can't help it. You make a wish, and it's not for romance or riches. You wish for central heating. Joke 2. The universe doesn't deliver, but you pretend it put in an order with backlogged shipping. With no dawn to bleach the sky, you start noticing subtler glows. There's air glow here, chemistry's nightlight. Oxygen atoms recombine and shed their excess energy as a soft green. Sodium whispers yellow in a barely there band. Hydroxyl dances red along the horizon. The colors are faint but persistent, a chemical lullaby that never quite stops. If this atmosphere is laced with hydrocarbons, you might even be standing under the beginnings of a Titan-like haze, a thin brown veil that never brightens into daytime, only deepens its tea-stained tint. The world smells of nothing, tastes of metal on your tongue, feels like a museum closed after hours. Your thoughts meander to storms. Could lightning crackle here? It might, if convection still churns in the lower air or ash plumes punch upward from volcanism below. Lightning is a democratic force, happy to flash where charge separates, sun or no sun. And you wonder about sounds. You imagine a low thrum, a static sigh somewhere above those veils of green. Historians still argue whether historic reports of aurora, whispering, were literal acoustics transmitted through freezing air or poetry made by cold listeners. You decide to give the old storytellers the benefit of the doubt. Standing here, your brain fills quiet with meaning the way frost fills cracks. The stars keep their positions, but not quite. The planet spins, and constellations slide like beads on a slow string. You begin to orient by them. There's a bright blue-white diamond you use for north, a crooked hook for west. With enough nights, which is to say, with all nights, you could write a pilgrim's guide across this surface, waypoints stitched from starlight. Climb when the hook kisses the horizon. Stop when the diamond perches one palm above the ridge. You scratch a note in the rhyme with a gloved finger, a tiny chart already fading, a joke to yourself about inventing the first Night Scout badge for perpetual campers. Joke 3. And you pin it to your chest in imagination. As the aurora builds again, you pay attention to shadow. Does starlight cast one? Barely. Your shape is a rumor on the ground, an almost silhouette you see more by suggestion than by sight. When a fat, bright star clusters with its neighbors, your boot toe makes the faintest smudge shade. You grin at the discovery like a child, because it means light still wins small victories out here. Not enough to read by, unless your book is made of glow-in-the-dark ink, but enough to prove that darkness can be carved, molecule by molecule, into gentler forms. Your mind, a persistent archivist, files this sky with the planet's other secrets. The hidden ocean you knocked on, the core that grumbles, the gravity that refuses to let you drift away. It also files a cautionary tag. Even beauty can bruise. Cosmic rays aren't kind. Over lifetimes they unspool DNA like pulled thread. The aurora's lullaby carries a warning you hear between the notes. Still, you stand here, accepting that risk in thought if not in flesh, because curiosity is your species' favorite bad habit. Far off, the green softens to gray, then to black. The stars reclaim the full stage. You whisper thanks into your scarf and imagine an answer humming back, not from gods, not from ghosts, but from charged particles arcing their elegant mathematics above your head. The planet keeps sailing on, a ship with no harbor, rigged with a sky that never clears, never dawns, never dims enough to be nothing. Somewhere below, blind swimmers circle their vents and feel the faint tremor of your footsteps. Up here, you measure out time in colors and constellations, and for once you do not ask for morning. You simply breathe, slow and even, while the night writes another soft equation across the firmament. Your boots crunch onward, carrying you away from the shimmering auroras until only the stars remain, steady and cold above. The silence deepens, and you start imagining what might stir in the depths below. If there is life here, and that if glows in your mind like a neon sign, it will not look anything like deer grazing on meadows or birds circling a sky. The obvious truth is simple. Sunlight is the great sculptor of life on Earth, but here there is no light to sculpt with. If something breathes, it does so under pressure, in darkness, with tools you can barely imagine. You pause and kneel at a crack in the ice, tracing its jagged edge with your gloved finger. It feels like the border between two realities, your surface world, empty and frozen, and the unseen ocean below, possibly brimming with strange survivors. On Earth, deep-sea vents spit minerals into black water, feeding bacteria that thrive without photosynthesis. Out here, those same rules could apply, only harsher. Chemosynthesis, life powered by chemical reactions rather than sunlight, might not just be possible, it could be common. You chuckle quietly at the thought. Maybe photosynthesis is the weird trick, and Earth is the oddball, not the baseline. Your imagination runs with it. You picture microscopic cells clinging to vents, absorbing energy from iron, sulfur, or methane. You see them clustered in mats along hot fissures, pulsing slowly, their metabolism adapted to scarcity. Give them a few billion years, and maybe they've grown more adventurous. Simple worms snaking through thermal currents, crustacean-like forms with shells hardened against pressure, bioluminescent flashes blinking across the abyss like Morse code. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your memory. Some Earth microbes survive on nothing but hydrogen gas and rock dust. They eat stone. If life can gnaw rock and call it dinner back home, why wouldn't it do the same here? The silence presses harder, and you start whispering your thoughts out loud. Maybe you're down there. Maybe you've never known a sunrise. Maybe you think warmth comes only from the belly of the world. Your words fog and freeze instantly, scattering as tiny crystals. You can't shake the eerie feeling that something hears you, not in a mystical way, but in the simple fact that vibrations travel through ice. If microbes or creatures live beneath, maybe your voice is just another tremor rippling through their dark sea, a signal they'll never interpret. Historians still argue whether intelligence is inevitable if life lasts long enough. Does evolution always climb toward complexity, or can it stall forever in microbial simplicity? If there are oceans beneath you, do they cradle nothing more than endless mats of bacteria? Or could they host civilizations that will never break through the ice? You imagine blind architects building coral-like cities around thermal vents, glowing faintly with bioluminescence, their world measured not in days or years, but in heat pulses and chemical tides. To them, starlight is a myth. The concept of sky doesn't exist. They've never known they are passengers on a planet wandering the galaxy. The thought sends a shiver down your spine, not fear, but awe. You glance up at the stars and realize you're standing at the intersection of two worlds. Above, infinity burns cold. Below, warmth might breed life and silence. You're the bridge, the trespasser between realms. The weight of that realization makes you laugh again, softly, shaking your head. Great. I'm the cosmic delivery guy, except I didn't bring pizza. Joke number 2 lands in the emptiness, and you feel a little warmer for it. You walk again, feeling the ice flecks faintly beneath your boots, a reminder that it isn't solid all the way down. Your mind drifts to panspermia, the idea that life spreads across the cosmos by hitching rides on rocks, comets, or rogue worlds. If this planet harbors microbes, then it's not just a victim of exile. It's a carrier, drifting for billions of years, waiting to brush against a solar system where warmth could thaw its seas. In that sense, the planet becomes a kind of ark, carrying passengers who don't know they're traveling. It makes you wonder if Earth itself once hosted seeds from a rogue wanderer that strayed too close. Maybe we owe our existence to a homeless planet that dropped in for a visit. You stop at a jagged ridge, leaning against its sharp edge. The rock is black and pitted, but in the starlight it gleams like obsidian. For a wild moment, you imagine carving a hole, drilling down, sending a probe into the oceans. The dream feels both urgent and absurd. Urgent because curiosity gnaws at you. Absurd because you don't have the tools, not even a shovel. All you have is imagination, which is sometimes more dangerous than equipment. The air grows colder. You stamp your boots, rub your gloves, and mutter your third joke. If I freeze here, someone better tell the creatures below to put me on ice display. Call it modern art. The silence offers no applause, but you chuckle anyway. Humor remains your lifeline, your rope in the endless dark. You take one last look at the horizon. Nothing stirs. Nothing changes. Yet the possibility beneath your feet keeps the night alive. This rogue planet may look dead, but deep inside, it might be humming with secrets, with alien bacteria stubbornly dividing, with strange creatures swimming in black seas. And you realize, perhaps for the first time, that alien life doesn't need to be out there among the stars. It could be under your boots, staring blindly up, never knowing the sky exists. The horizon feels lower here, pressed down by a weight of gloom so thick you could almost scoop it up and spread it like tar. You trudge across jagged ground, and suddenly the air changes. Thin, yes, but carrying an unfamiliar tang. You pause, sniffing cautiously through your scarf. The obvious truth hits you. This rogue planet still clings to an atmosphere, however faint. It's not the kind you can breathe for long without collapsing, but it's here, stubborn as the gravity beneath your boots. You stand still, waiting for your ears to register something. Wind, a sigh, a whistle across stone, but there's nothing. The atmosphere is too sparse to carry much sound, yet it holds traces of chemistry. Maybe methane, maybe carbon monoxide, maybe gases so alien your tongue wouldn't know what to call them. You imagine storms once racing across this sky, thick clouds bruised purple and orange. Now they've thinned to rags, drifting in silence. It's odd how even the faintest whisper of atmosphere feels reassuring. You've been walking in silence, so deep your thoughts echoed louder than footsteps. Now you sense movement above, even if it's invisible, molecules bumping, colliding, thinning into the void. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Titan, Saturn's big hazy moon, has a thicker atmosphere than Earth. Imagine that, tiny Titan outgassing like a champion, while a whole planet like this barely scrapes together a veil of air. You laugh softly. Size really isn't everything, huh? You shuffle onward and notice frost feathering across boulders, curling in delicate patterns that almost look like frost flowers back home. On Earth, those bloom in cold mornings when moisture crystallizes on windows. Here, they bloom eternal, sculpted by thin winds that never die. You reach out, brush one, and it shatters instantly into powder. The sound is faint but sharp, like brittle paper tearing. Historians still argue whether Earth's early air, before plants oxygenated it, was poison or merely unpleasant. Here, You can guess the answer: poison. But you can't shake the thought that some kind of chemistry dances in these faint gases. Methane haze, ammonia mist, carbon dioxide frost. All the ingredients for strange storms. You imagine lightning flashing in a sky tinted purple by hydrocarbons, thunder rolling but never reaching your ears. Maybe such storms still brew now, rare and slow, sparks hidden behind the dark curtain above. You stop at a ridge where the ground drops sharply into a basin. Inside, mist clings to the floor like smoke caught in a glass bowl. You descend cautiously, boots sliding on frost, until the fog wraps around your knees. It chills but also dazzles. Tiny ice crystals catch starlight, twinkling like dust from a shattered chandelier. You wave your arm, and the mist swirls, sluggish, heavy. The air here is thicker, pooled like water in a low place. You breathe, and the tang burns your throat. Your lungs scream a warning, and you cough hard, retreating back up the slope until the air thins again. Still, your brush with the basin mist sparks questions. What if those gases pull deeper, sealing caverns with dense, protective air? Life below might thrive in little atmospheric pockets, feeding on chemistry. Maybe storms even circulate under the ice, like an upside-down weather system, feeding alien cycles no human has ever named. The thought makes you grin despite the sting in your lungs. Great, alien weather, because snowstorms weren't annoying enough. Above you, the aurora shimmers faintly, weaker here, but still restless. The light filters through haze, casting the basin in ghostly hues. The effect is hypnotic, like standing inside a kaleidoscope. For a moment, you almost believe you're not alone. The shapes in the mist seem to shift like figures, moving slowly, heads turning. You blink, and the illusion collapses. Just refraction, just gases, but your heart skips anyway. You laugh, shaky but genuine. Figures. First time I think I see someone out here, and it's just fog trying to cosplay. That's joke number 2, though your chuckle sounds too nervous for comfort. But you'll take it, better nervous laughter than silence swallowing you whole. As you walk away from the basin, the thin wind brushes your cheek. You freeze, because you swore you felt a sound, like a hiss, faint as a whisper. You stand still, breath caught, straining to listen. Nothing, just your own pulse thudding in your ears. Still, you wonder, did the atmosphere just speak, or did your imagination crack under pressure? Ancient reports claimed people could hear auroras hiss faintly in the air. Historians still argue if that's science or folklore. Maybe you've just joined the argument. You move on, letting the mist fade behind you. The sky clears, sharper now, starlight carving thin shadows across the frozen rock. The atmosphere may be weak, but it's enough to scatter cosmic rays, enough to wear faint auroras, enough to remind you that this planet refuses to be stripped bare. Against the odds, it still holds a breath, however shallow. And as you stand under the glittering sky, lungs aching but alive, you realize something humbling. You're standing in the company of persistence. Stars may burn and die, suns may fling worlds away, but this planet still clutches its atmosphere with desperate fingers. It's a cosmic reminder that survival isn't about thriving. Sometimes it's just about refusing to let go. You leave the misted basin behind and climb to a shoulder of rock where the planet's skin feels taut, as if drawn over a great moving body. You stand very still and listen for motion you can't hear. There is no wind and no surf, yet everything is moving anyway. This world, you upon it, all of it sliding through the galaxy like a dark ship with the lanterns doused. The obvious truth taps you on the shoulder. Without a parent star, there is no year here. No tidy loop back to some springtime. Your calendar app would stare at the sky, shrug, and file the entry under perpetual. But aimless isn't quite right, you realize. The planet doesn't wander randomly. It's riding a wide, patient orbit around the Milky Way, the same way your old neighborhood rode along without you noticing. The galaxy is a slow river, and this world is a leaf in its current. It keeps a sedate tens of kilometers per second pace relative to the local stars, fast enough that if you had roadside billboards for constellations, they'd still take centuries to go by. You imagine the universe posting a speed limit sign. Vacuum ahead. Next service station in 10,000 light years. Joke 1, and you grin into your scarf. You crouch and touch the rock, half expecting to feel a faint tug, a suggestion of acceleration. Nonsense. Of course, the numbers are too large and your body too small to notice. Still, the idea helps you anchor the picture. This planet is not a rock stuck in space, but a traveler with a route. It loops around the galactic center every couple 100 million years, threading spiral arms, sliding past clouds of hydrogen, slipping through star fields where nobody knows its name. In young days, remember that glowing crack you knelt beside? It might have sailed out of a crowded nursery cluster, dodging siblings and bullies, its gravity plucked like a string by giants until, one day, the last nudge flung it clear. Historians still argue whether the long drift of such worlds is sculpted more by close brushes with passing stars or by the broad, tidal hand of the galaxy's spiral arms. Some swear massive molecular clouds yank them into new lanes like cosmic tow trucks. Others propose slow resonances nudge them over eons, the way a child on a swing hardly notices each tiny push. You don't pick a side. You're busy enjoying the photo on the box while the experts assemble the puzzle. You try to imagine a map, not the tidy ovals of schoolroom planets, but a tangled graph of slingshots. Close pass here, velocity vector tilting slightly, a near miss there, speed shaved or added by a fraction, a million micro-encounters stacking up like the interest on a long, cold mortgage. Sometimes, the planet may skim through an outer comet cloud of a star system and steal a few ice balls like snacks grabbed from an unattended table. Sometimes, it will be the snack, dragged inward and captured by a new sun. Sometimes, it will pass noiselessly through, the resident planets none the wiser. On those rare, unlucky days, Cosmic Tuesday the 13th, it might plow straight into a system and play the part of wrecking ball. But mostly, it keeps to itself, a ghost that leaves the curtains undisturbed. You turn your head and watch the constellations creep. Out here, east and west have no meaning besides where you decide to point. You name directions by stars, hook, diamond, river, because toward the galactic center sounds like narration from a documentary you're not quite awake for. In a softer corner of your mind, you wonder how many other rogues share the lane. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some estimates suggest there could be more free-floating planets than stars, perhaps dozens for every sun, a dark archipelago drifting where no lighthouse shines. You imagine group chats for homeless worlds, then immediately imagine every chat being nothing but silence and the occasional aurora selfie. If there's any drag to speak of, it's barely there. The interstellar medium is thinner than the best vacuum back home. Your planet plows through it like a needle through fog. Dust does accumulate on geologic timescales, leaving a faint patina the way a ship's hull gathers salt, but it won't slow the planet any more than a handful of snow slows a mountain. Gravitational encounters are the real steering wheel. Now and then, a compact star, a white dwarf, a neutron star, rushes by at foolish speeds, and the two gravity wells nod at each other like wary strangers passing in a dark alley. Every nod changes the math by a whisper. Over eons, whispers move mountains. You pace along the ridge and picture the planet's trail not as a line, but as a memory through neighborhoods. It threads open suburbs of sparse stars, glides past bright clusters like cities seen from a night highway, crosses dusty lanes where newborn suns still smell of hot paint. Somewhere in that past, your world might have slung by a supernova, catching a shower of heavy elements like confetti flung too late after the party. Somewhere ahead, a giant molecular cloud waits with lanes of denser gas that will brush the magnetosphere and thicken the auroras you've been timing like aurora o'clock. On your imaginary dashboard, the navigation voice reroutes forever. In 30 million years, merge onto Perseus Arm Parkway. Joke 2, politely delivered by a very patient robot. You kneel and press your ear to the ice, a habit now, listening to the planet's inside voice. The rumble is psychological, but the comfort is real. Beneath you, the hidden ocean rides this galactic journey without ever seeing the stars. Microbes divide, vents plume, chemistry plays its midnight symphony. If panspermia has any poetry, this is it, a sealed jar of life being ferried across unimaginable distances, waiting to be warmed by accident or adoption. If one day this rogue schemes close enough to a new sun and is caught, soft as a ball into a glove, that ocean might thaw wider, and descendants of the blind swimmers could taste a new chemistry. The thought floats through you like heat, thin but real. Historians still argue whether capture is common or a statistical fairy tale. The numbers are cruel, the timing tighter than threading a needle on a roller coaster. Yet even skeptics admit it must happen sometimes. The universe is old. Given time, all unlikely things form a line. You picture a quiet, elderly star adopting a dark world out of sheer gravity and calling it mine, and the image is tender enough to make you smile. Joke 3 unfurls as a whisper. Interstellar adoption papers signed in triplicate, stamped by Newton, filed under long shots. You stretch, feel the cold tug at your joints, and accept that the road ahead is all road. No gas stations, no diners, no you are here arrows. Only the slow, stately drift around a center you will never see up close. That should feel bleak. Instead, it feels liberating. A planet without a year has no deadlines. A traveler without an itinerary can't be late. You think of the gravity that won't ghost you, of the auroras that refuse to call it quits, of the breath-thin atmosphere that clings like a promise. Aimless or not, the wander continues, and you, for now, are welcome to ride along, to count jokes in the dark and mark the miles and constellations. Your boots grind down the slope until the flatness below stretches into forever, a plain so wide it makes you dizzy. At first, you think it's peaceful. Then a darker thought creeps in. This planet doesn't always wander quietly. A rogue world carries mass, carries gravity, and gravity is the rudest kind of baggage. It insists on shaking hands with everyone it passes. The obvious truth looms. Rogue planets can collide with other worlds, smashing through systems like gatecrashers at a party where the punch bowl is made of molten rock. You imagine it vividly. Somewhere out there, another solar system drifts in comfort, planets looping their star in neat, predictable ellipses. Then wham! Out of the void, a silent planet, invisible until the last second, barrels in on a crossing trajectory. There's no brake, no steering wheel, no polite horn honk to say excuse me. The rogue simply arrives, dragging its gravitational wake, tugging orbits out of shape. Sometimes it just nudges, tilts a planet's path, yanks a comet into a new lane. Other times, it slams full force, world on world, crust against crust, releasing enough energy to sterilize everything within reach. Scientists estimate such collisions are rare on human timescales, but inevitable given the age of the universe. If it can happen, eventually it will. The thought makes you shiver, and not just from the cold. You glance upward, as if expecting a planet to fall from the stars and crash into your head like an oversized billiard ball. Joke number 1 sneaks out. If Earth ever gets whacked by one of these, at least Monday mornings won't matter anymore. You chuckle nervously, knowing it's gallows humor, but humor nonetheless. You crouch at the edge of a fissure, peering into blackness. The crack stretches downward, wide enough for a human to slip inside, though you'd never dare. For a moment, you imagine it as the scar of a past collision, proof that your wandering host had once brushed another world. The rock edges are jagged, melted smooth in places as if licked by unimaginable fire. Was it volcanic? Was it impact? Historians still argue whether rogue worlds carry the scars of direct collisions or if most simply graze, their gravity doing the damage rather than blunt force. Looking at the wound beneath your boots, you can't tell. The planet keeps its secrets. The ground trembles faintly as you stand, a reminder of the forces slumbering below. You picture the unimaginable violence of two worlds colliding, shockwaves cracking crusts, atmospheres torn away, molten seas flung into space. The aftermath would be chaos, new moons forming from rubble, fragments scattering as comets, oceans vaporized into mist. And yet, out of destruction, new beginnings. Earth itself was likely shaped by a collision with a Mars-sized rogue, birthing our moon. That quirky tidbit gives you pause. Without a cosmic crash, you might not even exist. Your brain, desperate for comfort, files the lesson under sometimes wrecking balls build cathedrals. You keep walking, crunching frost underfoot, when your imagination betrays you again. You picture standing on Earth as a rogue planet approaches, a black sphere sliding silently across the night sky, growing larger every day. No fiery tail, No warning glow, just a dark circle blotting out stars. Panic would spread long before impact. Scientists would argue probabilities, governments would argue budgets, and ordinary people would stockpile canned beans. And when the day finally came, there'd be no stopping it. You smile grimly at the thought and mutter joke number 2. At least Hollywood would finally get its asteroid movie sequel right. The silence of your rogue world feels heavier after that. You stamp your boots and remind yourself you're already standing on one of these wanderers, and it hasn't collided with anything yet. Maybe most never do. Maybe most drift forever, dodging stars and slipping between galaxies like shadows in a dance hall. It's oddly comforting. Proof that survival is possible even without a sun, even without a home. As you crest a small ridge, you notice boulders scattered like dice across the plain. They're huge, some the size of houses, and many are fractured, as though tossed by titanic impacts. You run a hand across one and feel the cold sting through your glove. Perhaps these are the remnants of ancient collisions, debris frozen where it landed eons ago. You imagine a time when the planet was struck, rock hurled skyward, fragments raining down across its surface. Some pieces may still drift in its orbit, if orbit is the right word for a planet that circles nothing. You pause, suddenly aware of your own fragility. One rogue world can obliterate another, and yet here you are, flesh and bone, walking across the evidence. It's absurd, humbling, and darkly funny. You whisper joke number 3. Note to self, never invite rogue planets to dinner. Their table manners are terrible. The laugh bounces back from the rocks, thin but welcome. The sky above remains mercilessly calm. Stars wheel slowly, auroras faintly whisper, and no deadly planet looms in sight. Still, the thought of cosmic collisions clings to you like frost. You realize that wandering isn't harmless. This planet may look lonely, but it's also dangerous, a stray dog with teeth sharp enough to kill sun's children. And you, its accidental passenger, can only hope its path through the galaxy stays quiet for now. You tighten your scarf, plant your boots, and keep walking. Each crunch of frost is a promise to yourself, to keep going, to face the silence, to carry the weight of collision stories without succumbing to them. The planet beneath you has survived impacts and exile. Maybe you can survive the night. The frost crunches softer now, as if the ground itself is tiring of carrying you. You pause at the edge of another broad plain and tilt your head back, letting your imagination trace arcs invisible in the night. A rogue world doesn't always remain alone forever. Gravity, that relentless matchmaker, sometimes pulls wanderers into new homes. The obvious truth: a rogue planet can be captured by a star, bound again to a light it never expected to orbit. You imagine it. This planet, your reluctant host, sailing close enough to a star that the sun's gravity snares it. At first, its path would bend only slightly, like a flirtatious glance. Then tighter, spiraling, until suddenly the wanderer becomes a satellite once more. It would trade endless night for cycles of warmth and shadow, its icy seas loosening under the kiss of starlight. Perhaps its hidden life would bloom upward, breaking through crusts of ice to breathe atmospheres renewed. Capture, rare as it may be, offers a second chance. Scientists think such events are rare, yes, but the galaxy is so vast and old that rarity becomes inevitability given time. Historians still argue whether our own solar system has stolen visitors in the past. Some suspect distant, strange-angled objects in the Kuiper Belt are refugees from other stars, captured during the sun's early days in a crowded nursery cluster. If it happened once, why not again? You picture an ancient meeting, our sun tugging gently, this rogue hesitating like a nervous guest, then finally accepting the invitation. There's a strange tenderness in the idea. You keep walking, and your breath fogs upward, frosting instantly. The stars are mercilessly still, but your mind sees movement, dark worlds gliding silently, suddenly brightening as they fall under new suns. It makes you think of stray animals. Some wander forever, some find homes, some are adopted unexpectedly by families who never thought they needed them. Joke number 1 slips out of your mouth. Rogue planets are just cosmic strays looking for a forever star. You grin despite yourself, your teeth aching from the cold. Your boots crunch over a slope of shattered stone, and you pause at a boulder larger than a house. Its surface gleams faintly, almost metallic, as if something scorched it long ago. You wonder if it was heated by tidal forces during a near miss, when this planet brushed a star close enough to glow but not close enough to stay. Encounters like that twist atmospheres, boil oceans, fracture crusts, and sometimes they end with capture. Other times, the rogue slingshots away, carrying scars of almost having a home. You run your hand across the cold rock, tracing those imagined scars, and the gesture feels oddly intimate, like reading Braille from a planet's diary. A quirky tidbit drifts into memory. Simulations suggest that newborn stars, still in their nurseries surrounded by gas and dust, are especially good at grabbing rogue planets. The thick disk of material acts like a net, slowing wanderers down so the star's pull can hold them. Imagine dozens of newborn stars in a cluster, each snagging rogues like kids trading marbles. Some planets may have been born wandering and adopted early, others cast away only to be reclaimed later. In cosmic terms, foster care is common, even if the paperwork is just math. You stop at the lip of a canyon, its depths swallowed in shadow. The air feels thicker here, pooled like it did in the mist basin. You imagine it filling with steam if the planet were ever captured, ice melting into seas that would roar and churn. Maybe the canyon would flood, hosting rivers that carve valleys. You picture green landscapes unfurling where now there is only black frost. It's impossible not to feel a pang. This world, so cold and desolate, carrying the potential for rebirth if only it met the right star. You whisper softly into the void, maybe one day. Your voice freezes into crystals, drifting down into the canyon like dust. For a brief, absurd moment, you imagine microbes far below catching your words as vibrations, mistaking them for prophecy. You chuckle at the thought, joke number 2, and keep walking along the rim. The night remains unbroken, but you catch yourself thinking about warmth. Not warmth from your own shivering body, but warmth flooding back into the planet if capture ever came. Imagine auroras fading under blue skies, oceans thawing into waves, creatures from dark seas crawling toward the light. To them, it would be apocalypse and miracle at once. The end of their eternal night, the beginning of something unimaginable. You sigh, leaning against a jagged spire. Captures are improbable, but improbability is not impossibility. Somewhere, right now, in a galaxy spinning with billions of stars, a rogue world is being adopted. Maybe it's blooming. Maybe it's cracking into chaos. You'll never see it, but the thought keeps you company, like a bedtime story the cosmos tells when the dark gets too heavy. Joke number 3 slips out with a grin. I hope whoever adopts us brings snacks. The sound of your laughter vanishes into the canyon, but the warmth it sparks lingers. You tug your scarf tighter, take one more look at the frozen landscape, and set your boots moving again. Because if this world can drift for billions of years waiting for capture, then surely you can keep walking a little longer. You pause with a palm on the frost-black stone and listen to the planet's hush, and the idea you've been circling finally lands. This wanderer isn't just a survivor. It could be a courier. The obvious truth first, because your brain likes checklists. If life is going to spread, it has to stay alive long enough to travel. That means shielding, patience, and rides that don't throw the cargo out the window at the first bump. A rogue planet offers all three, not a limousine. Exactly, more like a slow-moving freight train with the lights off. Think back to the glow under the ice you knelt above, those hypothetical vents where blind swimmers drift in warm, mineral fog. Now picture a violent day. A deep impact shakes the crust, spalls rock upward, and sprays debris into the sky. Most pieces fall back. A few escape. Inside those escaping shards, tucked centimeters from any surface, microbes might nap through the fireworks, insulated from heat and radiation by their rocky sleeping bags. It's lithopanspermia, the rock-born kind, playing out on a world that has time to spare. You half smile at the image of the universe's least glamorous rideshare. Cosmic Uber pool. Driver may take several 100 million years to arrive. Joke 1. Your boots crunch forward while your mind keeps assembling the kit. Dormancy is step 2. Earth microbes have shown a flair for patience. Spores that shrug at vacuum. Bacteria that endure radiation like stoics. Tardigrades that fold themselves into crunchy little commas when the water leaves. A quirky tidbit surfaces. There are records of microbial spores revived after ridiculously long imprisonments in salt crystals and permafrost. Whether all such claims hold up is a separate soap opera, but the direction is clear: biology can wait. Out here, wait is the whole job description. Now the route. In a stellar nursery, the place stars are born in clusters. The distances between newborn systems are cozy by galactic standards. Your rogue planet could thread that neighborhood repeatedly, crossing and recrossing the same space as it loops the galactic center. Each pass through the nursery is a chance to intersect other systems' outskirts, to share dust, to trade pebbles like kids flicking marbles across a classroom floor. Historians still argue whether ancient myths of life descending from the heavens were poetic coincidences or vaguely remembered meteor showers spun into origin stories. But your present-day thought is simpler. Stones do fall, and sometimes they bring more th. And heat. Even outside nurseries, transfers can happen. Your planet's debris plume might graze a distant system's comet cloud. A fragment gets nudged inward, warms, and, after eons, lands in the shallows of a young ocean as gently as a snowflake. Heat of entry? Yes, but a fist-sized rock's core stays cool while its surface ablates. The capsule survives, like an egg soft-boiled by friction and still edible in the center. If it splashes into water or settles into snow, the landing grows kinder still. You imagine a tiny colony blinking metaphorical eyes, tasting new chemistry, deciding, without deciding, to divide. Customs declaration, you murmur. Nothing to declare except an entire biosphere. Joke 2, and the night lets you keep it. Rogue planets add another twist. They are habitats in transit, not just rock mail. If a thick atmosphere blankets the surface, hydrogen-rich, heat-trapping, some models suggest such worlds could keep liquid water even without a star. Yours wears a thinner veil, but the principle stands. Life doesn't need a destination if the vehicle is also the home. Subsurface oceans can cradle passengers through the long dark, then brush a system close enough to scatter spores whenever impacts loft spray. Imagine that, a planet-sized arc, sending out occasional postcards made of ice grains and dust, each one carrying a whisper of metabolism. Skeptics tap their pens, and you hear them in your head. Vacuum dries. Radiation shreds. Time forgets. All true, and you don't wave it away. This scheme depends on probabilities multiplied across absurd spans. Many stones, many attempts, many misses. But the galaxy is old, and multiplication is patient. Give a process 4 billion years, and it will try on every outfit in the closet. Somewhere, sometime, a fragment lands where it can matter. You climb a low ridge and look out over a scatter of house-sized boulders, half buried like teeth. You picture one of them blown skyward long ago, falling back as most do, and you picture its cousin crossing interstellar space like a quiet pilgrim. Within, dried cells curl in glassy layers, sugars and proteins vitrified into a kind of biological amber. They don't know seasons, only the occasional tickle of cosmic rays. Your aurora clock returns as a private joke. On the road they never see auroras, but the rays visit anyway, tapping the rock like a persistent neighbor. Most pilgrims fail. A very few arrive. It's messy, unromantic, and completely in character for chemistry. Another debate, this one with living room stakes. Are we the recipients or the broadcasters? Perhaps Earth has been both. Impacts have splashed our own microbe-filled ejecta into space for billions of years. You imagine some lonely stone from our world, dusted with terrestrial bacteria, coasting for ages until it taps the ice of a rogue planet like this one. A tiny hello, a seed in return. Historians still argue whether life began here or moved in, whether abiogenesis is common or freakishly lucky. You may never get an answer, but you can enjoy the symmetry. Seeds fly both ways in a windy universe. You think of your knock on the ice back in the hidden ocean country, your silly tap, your anybody home? Maybe that is how panspermia always sounds, a faint knock delivered by stone. Most doors never open. Some crack. Fewer still swing wide to a chemistry ready to answer. You smile and add joke 3 to keep warm. Frequent flyer miles for tardigrades must be off the charts. Platinum status with complementary vacuum. Night presses closer. Not darker, there is no darker. Just nearer, the way quiet leans in when you stop narrating. You try a thought experiment. Erase every star, leave only black. Would life still move? You think yes, because the engines are small and stubborn. Geothermal vents, chemical gradients, molecules hunting lower energy states. Panspermia isn't a grand design. It's entropy's side hustle. When rocks fly, some carry passengers. When those passengers land somewhere survivable, chemistry goes back to doing what it likes best, improvising. You breathe and watch your exhale crystallize into a tiny snow. Your rogue planet keeps trundling on, a dim ship cutting a silent wake through the thinnest sea. Maybe it will never seed anything. Maybe it already has, a dozen times over, and the proof is currently crawling on a muddy shore circling a quiet orange star, trying to invent toast. You won't know, but you accept the picture like you accept gravity's reliable hand and the aurora's occasional mercy. Worlds are not just destinations. Sometimes they are envelopes. Sometimes they are gardens taking the long way around. You touch the stone, as if patting a courier on the shoulder. Good run, you whisper. The frost takes your words and makes them glitter for an instant. And then, as always out here, they vanish into the drift. You wander on until the ground dips and folds into strange ridges, the kind of landscape that looks as if someone froze a storm mid-motion. The obvious truth about this place hits you as soon as you pause to breathe. Alien nightscapes are nothing like the familiar daylight ones back home. They aren't bright meadows or sparkling deserts. They're jagged, distorted shadows that play tricks on your eyes. Without sunlight, there are no clean outlines. Everything here is sculpted in grayscale, frosted with ice, and softened by darkness. You kneel, tracing a ridge with your glove. It resembles a dune, but made of solid ice, its crest catching faint starlight so it gleams like the edge of a blade. The wind hasn't carved this. It's the slow creep of frost, the expansion of frozen gases that once tried to escape and failed. The dune is locked in time, a wave that rose and never fell. You chuckle quietly. Surf's up. Just don't bring a board unless you like fractures. Joke number 1 lands, muffled by your own grin. As you climb higher on the ridge, you see more of the nightscape unfold. Valleys stretch below, filled with frozen fog that glows faintly, like spilled milk smeared across black stone. The stars overhead shine so fiercely they cast weak, stretched shadows across the terrain. You find yourself mesmerized by the way darkness shapes the world here. It doesn't hide detail, it exaggerates it. Every jagged rock seems sharper. Every crater seems deeper. It's like walking inside a photograph developed with too much contrast. Historians still argue whether landscapes on such rogue worlds would remain static or churn slowly beneath the crust. Would volcanoes paint them in fire? Would glaciers grind valleys unseen? You suspect both might be true. As you walk across the plain, you notice fractured boulders stacked like cairns, as though the planet itself marked its long, slow journey. Perhaps tectonics nudged them upward, or maybe impacts shook them loose. Either way, they stand like monuments to endurance. The air, thin as it is, pools in some valleys. You descend into one and instantly notice a change. The frost crystals along the walls shimmer with auroral hues, green and violet, as if the atmosphere here caught stray whispers of light and poured them into the rocks. You crouch and brush a finger across the surface, and the crystals flake away, scattering like glitter. It's dazzling, but eerie. This is not the kind of beauty you find in warm sunlight. It's beauty you only see when your eyes adjust to perpetual gloom. A quirky tidbit surfaces from memory. On Pluto, methane and nitrogen ice carve strange shapes, towering blocks that shift with sublimation. Imagine those processes here, only colder, slower, grander. Entire mountains may breathe over millions of years, expanding and collapsing with frozen gases. What you see tonight might not be permanent at all. It might just be a snapshot in the planet's long, patient breathing. You step onto a ridge overlooking a frozen basin. The ground below is etched with patterns that look like fractals, branching veins of frost, twisting and curling like rivers or lightning bolts. From above, they resemble leaf skeletons pressed into stone. You blink, startled at how organic it appears, like the planet itself is trying to sketch. Looks like the world doodled in the margins, you murmur. Joke number 2, whispered into the cold, but it helps you smile. Standing there, You imagine what explorers in the far future might say if they ever land here. Would they see beauty or just danger? Would they carve paths through these frozen dunes? Or would they stare in wonder and leave the landscape untouched? It's strange to think that what looks like desolation to you might look like treasure to another species. Patterns of frost more valuable than gold. As you continue, you crest a slope and nearly slip. The ground here isn't solid rock, but cracked glassy ice, thin enough that you can see dark shapes beneath. It looks like waves frozen mid-crash, black depths trapped under a transparent lid. For a moment, vertigo grips you. You're not walking across land. You're walking across the skin of something much larger and something possibly alive beneath. You step carefully, boots squeaking against the glass. Joke number 3 pops nervously. Great, now I'm the topping on some alien creme brulee. You laugh, but your voice trembles. The landscape keeps unfolding in bizarre, surreal shapes, spires that rise like cathedral towers, arches of stone and ice bridging empty air, craters rimmed with crystals that glitter in faint auroral shimmer. Each one feels like a stage set waiting for an audience that will never arrive. You realize that on Earth, landscapes are shaped by the rhythm of day and night, by weather, by seasons. Here, there are no such rhythms. The planet sculpts itself in silence and patience, guided only by pressure, chemistry, and time. You stop on a high ridge and look back. The horizon is jagged, irregular, glowing faintly under a quilt of starlight. It's stark, alien, even hostile, but you can't deny it's also beautiful. This is a nightscape that doesn't need sunlight to be extraordinary. It speaks in sharp edges, frozen waves, and patterns of frost that only eyes patient enough can see. You breathe deeply, letting the icy air burn your lungs, and you whisper softly, "Alien, yes, but also home, at least for tonight." The path tilts upward, and soon the crunch of frost under your boots gives way to the rasp of bare rock. Here, the ice thins, leaving cliffs of dark basalt exposed like bones jutting through the skin of the planet. The obvious truth about this place is that even in endless cold, the geological heart never entirely dies. Worlds don't stop moving just because their stars abandon them. Deep below, heat lingers, and geology whispers and rumbles you can almost feel if you stand still long enough. You press your hand to the rock wall, half expecting a vibration. The stone is cold, unyielding, but your imagination fills in the rest. This planet may have volcanoes, perhaps not the fiery fountains you know from Earth, but cryovolcanoes that spurt plumes of water, ammonia, or methane into the dark. Somewhere across this frozen crust, geysers could blast silently upward, freezing mid-arc into crystalline snow that drifts back down. You grin to yourself. Snow days out here must be spectacular and also deadly. Joke number 1 earns a soft laugh from your own lips, which is enough. You climb higher, boots scraping, until you crest a ridge overlooking a crater field. The craters are vast, but some are softened, their rims melted and refrozen, as if reshaped from within. You imagine magma pushing upward long ago, boiling under pressure, never quite breaking through. Even now, tectonics might still stir faintly. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Even tiny moons like Io and Enceladus show violent geological activity, thanks to tidal heating. If small bodies can manage that much drama, surely a rogue planet this size can keep its core simmering. The air here tastes sharper, a hint of sulfur perhaps, carried up through cracks. You cough, pulling your scarf tighter, but the realization sparks awe. Gases are still escaping. That means processes are ongoing, not relics. The planet isn't just a relic floating in the void. It's alive in its own silent way, rumbling slowly, reshaping itself in the dark. Historians still argue whether rogue planets cool into geological corpses or remain restless for billions of years. Some insist radioactive decay alone can keep a mantle churning. Others believe only constant tidal stress can do it. Standing here, staring at cracked cliffs and faint fumes curling into auroral light, you lean toward the first camp. This world may be cold, but it isn't dead. You step down into a narrow ravine, walls towering on either side. The rock is streaked with strange white lines, mineral deposits hardened over eons. They gleam faintly under starlight, like frozen waterfalls carved sideways. You run a finger across one, and the crystals snap away, fragile as sugar. You imagine rivers of mineral-rich water once flowed here, boiling up from vents before freezing instantly in the thin air. The ravine feels like a fossilized artery, a frozen memory of circulation. Your boots crunch louder now as you cross patches of brittle ground. Suddenly, you hear a faint crack. You freeze, staring at the ground beneath. A fissure snakes outward from your boot, glowing faintly. Not glowing with light. Exactly. More a shimmer, a warmth breaking through frost. You crouch low, heart racing, and realize heat seeps upward here. Perhaps geothermal vents open below. You place a glove near the crack and feel a ghost of warmth, shocking against the surrounding freeze. For a fleeting moment, you imagine lying down beside it, soaking in its heat, as if the planet itself offered you a blanket. You smile. Finally, central heating took you long enough. Joke number 2 lands, and you hug the thought tight. As you move on, you notice more signs of restless geology. Warped ridges, tilted slabs, slopes buckled as though pushed from below. This is not a static world. It flexes, cracks, and heals slowly. You picture volcanoes deep underground, sealed under kilometers of ice, pressure building over centuries until, boom, a cryovolcanic eruption reshapes the surface. Plumes of water and gas loft into space, scattering icy grains across the void. To any distant astronomer, the plume would be invisible, but here it would be a ghostly fountain in silence, frozen fireworks celebrating the planet's refusal to die quietly. You stop at a plateau and gaze out. The surface spreads into fractured plains, ridged and warped, glowing faintly with auroral reflections. It's surreal, beauty born not from sunlight, but from the planet's inner stubbornness. Life might cling below, warmed by these same engines, protected by the ice. You realize geology here is more than background. It's the heartbeat that makes survival possible. Historians still argue whether Earth's own life began at volcanic vents or in shallow ponds. Either way, without geology, there would have been no spark. The same must be true here. Your chest tightens with awe. This lonely, wandering world might host its own version of Genesis, bubbling in the dark, fueled by the same geological breath you just felt. The silence deepens, pressing at your ears. You laugh softly, voice shaky but alive. Joke number 3 slips out. Next time someone says geology is boring, I'll tell them about the rogue planet with volcanic central heating. That should spice up the classroom. The laugh carries across the plateau and fades. You take a long, slow breath and let the smell of faint sulfur sting your throat. It's not pleasant, but it's proof. Proof that even in exile, even in starless cold, worlds still work, still churn, still refuse to surrender. And with that thought warming you more than any vent could, you tighten your scarf and keep walking into the night. You pause where the plateau breaks into a slope of shale and frost, and you let the quiet tell you what the clocks refuse to. The obvious truth arrives first, polite and implacable. Without a sunrise, time stops making sense the way you're used to. No circadian drumbeat, no noon to lean toward, no evening to fold into. Out here, time is not a bright ribbon you can see. It's a cold river you only feel, slipping past your ankles whether you're paying attention or not. You try to count breaths, then steps, then jokes, as if numbering things could coax an hour hand from the sky. It helps for a few minutes. 1, 2, crunch, crunch, but the mind wanders, and the river flows anyhow. You invent Aurora a clock, again, measuring the night by green veils that billow and thin. You pin your imaginary Night Scout badge back on your chest and set yourself a task. Learn the planet's slow pulse by watching shadow, not light. It's a fragile plan, but plans are heaters in places where central heating arrives late. There are other clocks, if you squint. The stars aren't fixed, they crawl. A bright diamond you named for north has shifted a finger width since you first noticed it days, or was it weeks, ago. Constellations shear under the planet's spin, and if you had a notebook and patience, you do. You lack only the pencil. You could write a rough calendar. When the crooked hook kisses the ridge, it's time to rest. When the river of stars curls overhead, time to walk. It's the same trick old navigators used, and historians still argue whether they measured nights by rising stars first or by the moon's moods. Either way, they pace their lives under a ceiling you now share. You carry your gaze down to the ground and look for geological clocks. A crack you warmed with your glove at the vent has grown a fragile rime again. Frost writes quickly here, which tells you the air is still thin and mean. You scratch a date into the brittle surface with your boot. Just a line, really, and promise to check it tomorrow. A word you use like a souvenir from a language this planet doesn't speak. Tomorrow will come whether there's a dawn or not. It always does. Deeper clocks tick under your feet. Radioactive isotopes in the mantle bleed heat with the patience of saints. Their half-lives are lullabies that last longer than civilizations. Potassium, 40, thorium, 232, uranium, 238. Names you once crammed for a quiz and forgot, are the reason the planet still grumbles, the reason the frozen creme brulee of its shell has warm custard beneath. You grin at your own callback, then add joke one for good measure. If time is dessert, this world definitely takes forever to set. The night accepts the pun without complaint. Your thoughts drift higher, beyond stars, to metronomes that keep better time than you ever will. Pulsars, dead suns spinning with ridiculous loyalty, sweeping space with radio beacons so regular you could set an interstellar wristwatch to them. A quirky tidbit perks up from memory. Navigators have already tested pulsars as a galactic GPS. A spacecraft can, in principle, read their ticks and announce where it is without asking anyone. You imagine a future rover here, its little dish cocked to the sky, listening to a millisecond pulsar drum and tapping out. I am here, on the homeless road, right on schedule. And then there's the clock you wear without feeling it, relativity. Time runs a hair slower for you closer to the planet's center than it would on a lofted ridge. It runs a hair faster for the photon sprinting past your face than for the cold iron in your boot. Put an atomic clock by your cheek and another by your toe and wait a century. One would age a pinch more than the other. Joke 2 slips out because you can't resist. Finally, a skincare routine with real physics. Elevate your face to age slower. Einstein would arch an eyebrow at your vanity, but the math would not. Even on Earth, time is a patchwork. Leap seconds smuggled into June or December to keep sloppy planet spin aligned with precise atomic hertz. Calendars that wobble through reforms, seasons that drift. On a rogue planet, the patchwork shows its stitches. You invent holidays anyway, because that's what humans do. First aurora, you declare, looking up at the green lace. Day of the friendly gravity, you add, in honor of the friend that won't ghost you. Feast of the boilerplate vent. For the night you found warmth seeping through a crack, like a promise. If there were others here, you'd bake something. As it stands, you toast the air with a shaky breath, which immediately crystallizes and falls back like confetti. The celebration has decent stage effects, at least. The longer you walk, the more you understand that time on a lonely traveler isn't a straight line but a braid. One strand is survival, the immediate business of not freezing, of adding steps to steps. One is memory, callbacks you stitch to keep continuity, because continuity is warmth. Aurora clock, creme brulee ice, night scout, central heating. The third is the geologic epic, rumors of eruptions, oceans that dream, plates that argue by inches per century. You can hold all three at once if you breathe slowly enough. You reach a low saddle between two bluffs and sit, knees up, chin on mittens. The plateau below stretches like an empty calendar, blank squares waiting for ink. You won't fill them. This isn't that story. But somewhere, far ahead on this planet's track, a meeting sits like a circled date. Maybe it's a close brush with a newborn star's disk, where dust thickens and the auroras burst into opera. Maybe it's a flyby of a supernova remnant that sprinkles the surface with fresh iron glitter. Maybe, on a 1 in a bajillion Tuesday, the capture comes, and the first thin dawn spills down these very rocks and confuses the blind swimmers below. You won't be here to see it, and that's okay. Most worthwhile things in the universe mature offstage. The silence leans in. You try on a big thought the way you once tried on winter coats. Perhaps the opposite of loneliness isn't company. Perhaps it's purpose. This world has one, even if it never knows it. It carries oceans, shields chemistry, keeps time by decay and drift, shows off auroras when the cosmic rays drop by, and minds its lane. Purpose enough. You smile, and joke 3 arrives, softer than the others. If calendars had a mood setting, this one would be chill, recurring. You groan at yourself, then laugh anyway. The sound small but clean. A final, human-scale scrap of timekeeping offers itself, your tiredness. Muscles measure hours better than stars when you walk long enough. You stand, feel the tug in your calves, count out 10 breaths, and set off. The plateau accepts your footfalls and files them where it keeps everything, in the long archive. Behind you, the green veil folds and unfolds. Ahead, the diamond star inches along its track. Under you, the radioactive choir keeps singing its eon-long note. And you, small and stubborn, march to all of them at once, a traveler sinking to a planet that has made a life out of wandering. The landscape stretches flat and silent, but your thoughts run backward, tunneling through the dark like miners in search of the first spark. If this planet is wandering, if it is alone, then it must have begun somewhere. The obvious truth settles in quickly. Rogue worlds aren't born in the void. They're forged in the chaos of crowded nurseries, then hurled out by violence. They are orphans of gravity, tossed into exile by forces too large to resist. You picture it, the planet's infancy in a star's protoplanetary disk, gas and dust spiraling around a newborn sun. At first, everything is gentle, a hazy carousel of particles colliding, sticking, snowballing into clumps. Gravity plays midwife, pulling rubble into spheres, pressing dust into rock. This very world once spun warm and young, perhaps side by side with siblings, each tracing a path around their bright parent. You imagine molten seas, a thick young atmosphere, maybe even the first trickles of rain cooling the crust. Life could have whispered here in those days, or maybe it only waited. Then came the turmoil. In crowded systems, giants shove the little ones. A massive neighbor sweeps close, tugs violently, and suddenly the orbit tilts. A second encounter flings harder. And finally, the third, exile. Like a slingshot snapping, the planet is hurled outward, out of the nursery, out of the sun's embrace, into the cold corridors between stars. Astronomers still argue which chaos is more common, siblings fighting in crowded systems, or dying stars expelling children as they swell and shed their outer layers. Either way, you know the result. Lonely planets adrift, casualties of cosmic family drama. Your boots crunch on brittle ice, but your mind is elsewhere. You see supernovae exploding, hurling shockwaves that scatter planets like marbles across a floor. You see binary stars tugging each other's orbits, their planets slung into darkness by gravitational crossfire. You see black holes lurking, swallowing suns, and kicking planets loose. The galaxy is not polite. It births worlds only to fling them aside when the dance grows too crowded. You pause by a cracked spire of stone, its surface fractured into hexagonal patterns, frozen lava columns like organ pipes. They look ancient, but you realize this planet is older still. It carries scars of birth and banishment, silent evidence of an origin long past. You run your gloved fingers across the ridges, and for a strange moment, you feel like you're reading Braille carved by eons. You whisper, "I know you started somewhere." The frost glitters faintly, but offers no reply. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your memory. Simulations suggest rogue planets may outnumber stars by factors of 10 or more. That means exile isn't an anomaly, it's destiny for many. Entire swarms of newborn worlds are cast into the dark soon after birth, never given the chance to circle their suns. If Earth had been unlucky, you might be trudging across its frozen carcass right now, instead of this stranger. The thought makes you chuckle softly. Guess we won the cosmic lottery ticket, and spent it on Wi-Fi and reality TV. Joke number 1 warms you just enough to keep moving. The horizon glimmers faintly as an auroral ripple pulses across it. You squint, half dreaming. Perhaps this very planet once orbited a yellow sun like ours. Perhaps it had a blue sky, shallow seas, and maybe even continents. Then exile tore it away. Imagine civilizations rising, staring at the stars, then watching helplessly as their sun shrank to a dim spark and vanished. Did anyone survive that? Historians still argue whether life could endure such sudden cold, whether civilizations could adapt underground or in thermal refuges. You shiver, not from cold, but from the scale of the question. You crest a low ridge and look out. The ground beyond ripples like frozen waves, and in the distance, sharp mountains rear jagged against the starry sky. They remind you of tectonic scars, continents torn and shoved like broken puzzle pieces. Even in exile, the planet's interior kept working. Its origins weren't erased, just reinterpreted. You realize the nightscape you've been crossing is a palimpsest, each layer a reminder of some past chapter. Fiery youth, violent banishment, eternal drift. You stop, breath fogging faintly. You feel time pressing down like another layer of ice. Billions of years have passed since this world's origin, and billions more lie ahead. Its path is not yours. You are only a guest here, an intruder riding in the margins of its endless journey. The thought humbles you, but also steadies you. If a planet can endure exile for billions of years, maybe you can endure your own small banishments. Monday mornings, heartbreaks, awkward family dinners. You laugh quietly. Joke number 2 slides out. If this planet can get dumped and keep going, so can I. You descend into a shallow valley, walls streaked with mineral lines. You picture the moment of exile again, the sudden acceleration, the long arc out of the system, the cold closing in. For life, it must have felt like apocalypse. But perhaps in the dark, deep in hidden oceans, life held on. Origins don't vanish just because light does. And you realize this wandering planet, stripped of its star, still carries that origin forward. It's a vessel of memory. You stop at a cracked boulder, sit heavily, and stare upward. The stars swirl slow and silent. Somewhere, perhaps far ahead, another exile travels in parallel, born of another sun, carrying its own hidden stories. You'll never know them, but the thought makes the void feel less empty. Joke number 3 comes with a sigh. Galactic speed dating must be wild. Billions of lonely planets, none of them texting back. You chuckle at your own silliness, and the sound echoes faintly against the rocks. You stand again, tightening your scarf, and keep walking. This world's origins may be ancient, but they still matter. They explain the scars under your boots, the heat in the cracks, the oceans below. And they remind you that exile doesn't erase beginnings. It just writes new chapters in the same story. You crest another ridge and pause, the stars above cold as ever, the horizon jagged and glittering with frost. Your thoughts shift, not to the planet itself, but to the eyes that try to find it. The obvious truth: humans cannot see rogue planets with naked eyes. They don't shine like stars, don't reflect sunlight like moons, don't announce themselves with neon signs. They drift invisible, detectable only by patient science, by machines that stare into darkness far longer than any eyelid could stay open. You imagine astronomers back on Earth, their telescopes sweeping the sky, combing through the black for tiny clues. Sometimes it's a faint infrared glow, a leftover warmth from formation, still bleeding slowly into space. Other times, it's the gravitational lensing trick. A rogue planet drifts in front of a distant star, and for a few hours, the star's light bends, brightens, then fades again. That flicker is the planet's entire shout into the void. Without it, nobody would ever know it was there. Joke number 1 creeps onto your lips. Imagine being so shy your entire existence is a one-night-only eclipse. Historians still argue which discovery techniques count as the first true detection. Some point to microlensing events logged decades ago, stars blinking in ways only explainable by dark, planet-sized masses. Others argue the data was too fuzzy, that certainty came later, with bigger surveys and sharper instruments. The debates continue, papers citing papers, astronomers trading gentle barbs across conferences. But the consensus grows clearer. The galaxy is littered with wanderers. You're not alone in thinking this place is common. The math says it is. As you trudge down the ridge, your breath fogs instantly, crystallizing into dust that twinkles faintly in starlight. You imagine those crystals as data points, tiny signals for some faraway telescope to collect. The quirky tidbit you recall makes you grin. NASA once considered using the faint glow of rogue planets as waypoints for interstellar navigation, like cosmic lighthouses too dim for eyes, but bright enough for infrared sensors. The thought makes you laugh softly. GPS, Galactic Planetary Strays Edition. Recalculating, always. Joke number 2 lands with the crunch of your boots. You keep walking until the ground levels into a wide basin. Here, the horizon curves broader, the sky seeming larger. You tilt your head back and imagine telescopes orbiting far above Earth, their mirrors polished to impossible smoothness, staring at you without ever knowing your name. You picture the Vera Rubin Observatory scanning wide fields, detecting blinks of light when stars twinkle wrong. You picture future space missions with detectors so sensitive they can catch rogue planets by the faint warmth of their crusts. You smile, whispering to yourself, "They're looking for you, old traveler." And then, your imagination goes further. Suppose one day a probe does wander close enough to see this world directly. Cameras would click, infrared sensors would map, spectrographs would sniff its thin atmosphere. Imagine the surprise when they discover oceans under ice, chemistry bubbling unseen, maybe even life. A rogue planet, lifeless on the surface, but alive within, a revelation to shake textbooks and minds alike. The silence around you grows heavier, and you realize the irony. You're standing here, boots on rock, scarf tight against your throat, narrating the journey firsthand. And yet, for Earthbound scientists, this planet is still nothing more than a flicker in data, a suspicious curve on a graph. They will debate it for years, publish papers, argue statistics, while you've felt its heat seep through cracks, seen auroras spill across its skies, and imagined oceans whispering below. You laugh, softly and bittersweet. Joke number 3 slips out. I could write the field report right now, but peer review would call it anecdotal. You sit on a boulder and stare into the stars, thinking about how science chases shadows. Astronomy has always been detective work, piecing stories from faint clues from light years away. You respect it, even as you shiver. Without those distant eyes, you'd never have known rogue planets existed. Without them, you wouldn't be here, imagining footsteps in the frost. You rise again, stamping warmth into your legs, and set off across the basin. Each crunch of frost feels like punctuation in the universe's longest sentence. Telescopes may never catch this particular wanderer, but they will catch others. And when they do, humanity will learn what you already feel, that even in the starless dark, worlds still drift, still endure, and sometimes even whisper of oceans below. The night deepens, not darker, but quieter. You glance once more at the stars and murmur softly, "They'll find you one day." And with that promise echoing faintly in your chest, you keep walking into the endless drift. You stop at the crest of another ridge, lungs aching from the cold, and your imagination wanders somewhere stranger than geology or telescopes. If life exists here, and that if glows in your mind like a stubborn ember, what if it isn't microbial at all? What if it grew old, deep, and clever? The obvious truth about survival is that life adapts. It shapes itself to whatever cards physics deals. And here, the cards are eternal night, hidden oceans, and heat that whispers only from below. So, you ask yourself, what would a civilization look like in a world that has never seen a sun? You crouch, fingertips brushing the ice, and the picture forms. Cities under kilometers of ice, domes glowing faintly with bioluminescence, streets lined with creatures who never needed eyes but instead sense vibrations and chemical gradients. Whole cultures evolving around hydrothermal vents, worshipping the vents as gods of warmth. Their myths might speak of the ceiling above, the ice lid they never break through. To them, the sky is not a place to look, it is a prison roof. Joke number 1 tumbles out, quiet but amused. Imagine trying to sell them sunglasses. You walk down into a shallow canyon where the rocks lean inward, forming a natural hallway. The silence feels thick here, as if the planet itself is eavesdropping. A quirky tidbit bubbles up in your memory. Scientists speculate that if intelligent life did evolve on a rogue planet, it might never develop astronomy. Without stars, without a sun, the whole cosmos above would be a hidden secret. They would master chemistry, maybe even technology, without ever knowing they're adrift in a galaxy. That thought is both humbling and terrifying. An intelligence locked in darkness, brilliant but blind to the larger stage. You imagine them experimenting with sound, because light is useless. Their music might be seismic, tones carried through rock and ice, concerts performed as tremors and listened to with whole bodies. Their architecture might be clusters of resonance chambers where communities hum together, sharing knowledge and vibrations. Historians still argue whether intelligence always requires vision, but here, vision would be irrelevant. They would map the world with pressure and touch, building knowledge with senses you can only fumble to imagine. Your boots scrape on stone as you climb the other side of the canyon. You pause halfway, looking up at the stars with a pang of irony. You can see what they never will. Perhaps you're staring at constellations while entire civilizations below your boots live without knowing stars exist. You whisper softly, almost apologetically, "There's more out there than you think." Your voice crystallizes, scattering down the canyon like tiny bells, as if carrying the message to those imagined beings. Joke number 2 slips out with a grin. Though honestly, if they found out about Mondays, they'd thank the ice ceiling for hiding the universe. You laugh at your own silliness, but the humor keeps the chill from reaching your core. As you trudge higher, your imagination runs wilder. Suppose they found ways to harness geothermal energy, channeling vents into power for machines. Suppose they built vehicles gliding through black seas, sonar mapping their domains. Suppose, just maybe, they looked upward, not to stars, but to cracks in the ice, and wondered if something lay beyond. Curiosity is stubborn. Even in eternal dark, it finds a way. Perhaps one day they'll drill upward, break through, and taste starlight for the first time. You picture their blind forms shuddering at the shock of it. An apocalypse and revelation rolled into one. Historians still argue whether intelligence anywhere follows familiar patterns, tools, fire, language, or whether alien civilizations might be unrecognizable. Here, tools could be shaped from mineral deposits, fire replaced with geothermal steam, language carried in pulses of vibration. You try to picture meeting them, fumbling to communicate across senses you don't share. Maybe it would be impossible. Or maybe laughter, vibration, and rhythm would bridge the gap better than words. You crest the canyon's far rim, lungs burning. The stars are brutally sharp overhead, but your thoughts are still below. You imagine blind artists shaping sculptures by touch, blind philosophers debating whether the vents are eternal, blind scientists wondering if the ceiling above is infinite. Civilizations wrapped in ignorance and brilliance both, thriving in their own right, never needing a sun. Joke number 3 comes quietly, your smile bittersweet. Bet their museums don't waste half a wing on paintings of fruit bowls. You chuckle, because it's easier than weeping at the grandeur of the idea. You stand still for a long moment, letting the silence stretch. Maybe such beings don't exist here. Maybe this world carries only microbes, or nothing at all. But the possibility is enough. The night feels less empty knowing that somewhere, if not here, then on another rogue planet, alien civilizations might hum to each other in the dark, thriving without ever needing light. And that thought steadies your steps as you move forward, deeper into the endless drift. You stand at the edge of a cracked plateau and ask the question you've been dodging since the first crunch of frost under your boots. If you stayed, would you make a life here, or would the planet make a story out of you? The obvious truth arrives without drama. You can't live on this surface as is. Not for long. The air stings, the cold steals, the radiation nibbles, the dark unthreads your sleep. You need walls, heat, pressure, rhythm, for companions as necessary as food. So you start where any sensible castaway starts, shelter. The best neighborhood is the one that already pays for heating. You pick the warm seam you found back in the ravine, the hairline crack that tasted of sulfur and whispered central heating, finally. You picture an ice and regolith berm mounded over a small pressure hull, the hull ringed with bags of frozen dirt, radiation shielding, a good old-fashioned blanket with terrible thread count. You carve an airlock from ice you bake dry, line it with a polymer you sinter from volatiles and rock dust. Inside, the temperature rises into the realm where water thinks about melting. You hold your palms near the pipe you've snaked down into the warm seam and close your eyes. The planet breathes, very slowly, and you borrow a little breath for yourself. Power. You run a closed-loop heat engine on that gradient, vent to habitat, turning the whisper of geothermal into a steady trickle of electricity. Modest, but enough to light a few lamps, drive pumps, charge a radio. Later, you add a compact pile, a reactor in a can, if you're lucky enough to have hauled one here. But for now, the planet's simmering is your generator. Water is the easy part. You cut it from the walls, melt it in a jacketed tank, and smile at your own private sea in a steel pot. Housewarming party. You mutter, raising a tin mug to the pipe. Dress code, layers. Joke, one warms the room more than the pipe does. Air becomes craft. You split water for oxygen and stash the hydrogen as heat-hungry fuel. You circulate the cabin through zeolites scavenged from the regolith, baking them clean with a little of that precious power. Plants? Sunlight is a rumor, so you cheat. You rig LEDs and feed them from your generator, growing threadbare greens in stacked trays. Later, you seed fungal racks, because a quirky tidbit has been tapping at your skull since you read about it. Some melanin-rich fungi on Earth appear to harvest a trickle of energy from ionizing radiation, a dark photosynthesis that doesn't care about day. Maybe they'll be comfortable roommates here, a pantry that doesn't miss the sun. You smile at the thought of mushroom soup as a cosmic adaptation strategy. The clock problem reappears the moment the door seals. You want day and you need night. Your hormones are not negotiable. You rebuild time with cues. Aurora o'clock for a little stargazing after dinner, light dim cycles in the habitat, a fan's soft hum. You brought one, of course, to mark sleep. The Night Scout badge you pinned on as a joke becomes a chore list carved on the wall. Inspect vent, scrape rime from the intake, knock 3 times on the ice ceiling for the neighbors below. You name holidays no one else will keep. First Aurora, feast of the boilerplate vent, day of friendly gravity, and you celebrate with the only confetti available, your breath crystallizing and glittering down like applause. Exploration changes when you have a base to return to. You march farther, mapping the country in star-stitched triangles, painting the edges of your world with constellations you've renamed for home. The Crooked Hook shelters the south path. The Blue Diamond keeps watch over the warm ridge. The river spills across your route back to the hatch. You drive an auger through the ice in a 100-meter bore to listen for ocean echoes, then seal it again because do no harm isn't just for doctors. Historians still argue whether first contacts in human history were ethical or inevitable, triumphs or tragedies. You decide your first contact with whatever swims down there should be nothing at all. No contamination, no hasty glory, no grand speeches through a hole in the ice. You leave a sensor and come home. You send your position anyway, if only to prove to yourself you exist on more than one map. A whip antenna sprouts from the berm, and your radio taps to the rhythm of a millisecond pulsar. Tick, 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 so your message carries its own return address. I am here. You tell a sky that does not reply. Rogue planet, Aurora o'clock, central heating included. Joke 2 hitches a ride on the carrier wave because you refuse to let only the serious parts of you reach the stars. There are days, your invented ones, when you plan an outpost near the basin haze to study pooled gases, and days when you just walk until your calves complain, following the old fracture where warmth glows like banked coals. There are also days when the dark sits too close on your shoulder, and you make tea and listen to the fan, and let the habitat's little lights pretend they're a morning. You discover a rule from polar explorers still applies. Loneliness is a bigger predator than cold. Historians still argue whether those expeditions succeeded by planning or by stubbornness. You suspect the truth is both, braided into hot soup and a scheduled joke. Which brings you to the other side of the question, the one you avoid when the vent hums kindly. You might perish. A slipped boot could turn the glassy surface into a trapdoor. A seal might crack while you sleep, the thin air in your lungs trading places with something that ends the argument in a minute. A pump could fail at the wrong moment. If that's the story, it will be as brief and clean as frost. You try on the fear like a coat, then hang it back up. You've worn worse. And you offer joke 3 as a counterweight. If the museum under the ice ever needs an exhibit, at least the plaque will read, "First human popsicle, do not lick." You wince at your own gallows humor and keep it anyway. But suppose the other story unfolds. Suppose you don't perish, suppose you settle. The base grows into a cluster, the cluster into a warren, the warren into a small town under ice. You plant fungus and greens and keep bees of a sort, microbe cultures that turn waste sweet again. Children, someday, learn that morning is a lamp and sunset is a dimmer. They collect Night Scout badges and count constellations. They ask about stars the way you once asked about dragons. And when a drill does finally reach the ocean, it will do so with sterility, with treaties, with patience and poetry. Will you be here for that? Maybe not. Maybe your role is a small one. To prove a human can keep rhythm in a place with no drum. To remind whoever comes next that gravity won't ghost them. That creme brulee ice can hide warm custard. That a planet can be a courier and a home in the same lifetime. To show that purpose can outshine loneliness, even when outshine is a metaphor and light is measured in milliwatts. You end the day the way you began the story, by listening. The vent hums. The fan purrs. The aurora walks its slow green across the ceiling of your world. You knock 3 times on the ice, a silly ritual for neighbors you'll probably never meet. Somewhere below, pressure waves carry the tap away. Somewhere above, your pulsar-timed message sails into indifference that doesn't feel indifferent at all. Settling or perishing, surviving or failing, you realize the planet has already given you the one thing you thought only sunlight could provide, a reason to keep time. You trudge across one last frozen plain, and the thought blooms slowly, as patient as the frost. There is no ending here. The obvious truth is that a rogue planet doesn't arrive anywhere. It only continues. No finish line, no sunrise, no final curtain. Just the slow drift around the galaxy's center, a dance that takes hundreds of millions of years, repeated endlessly. To walk here is to accept that you are part of something infinite. You pause, boots crunching softly, and lift your eyes. The stars don't blink. They burn steady, watching without judgment. You think of every step you've taken, every joke whispered into silence, every aurora clock you've marked. Each one is gone, yet all are part of the planet's quiet record now. You are an annotation in its endless journey. And that, strangely, feels like enough. You kneel, gloved hand pressing against the cold crust. Beneath you, the hidden ocean slumbers. Perhaps life stirs there, tiny, blind, stubborn life that knows nothing of suns or galaxies. Perhaps it doesn't. Historians still argue whether life is inevitable wherever conditions allow, or a rare accident too precious to repeat. You'll never know. But the thought that this world could be carrying seeds through the void makes your chest ache in a way both heavy and comforting. You chuckle softly, your voice muffled by the scarf. Joke number 1. Talk about the ultimate road trip, billions of years without a single bathroom break. The sound startles you, bouncing faintly across rocks, and for a second it almost feels like the planet laughs back. You climb a low ridge and stand tall, imagining the planet's endless itinerary. It will slip through spiral arms, brush past gas clouds, maybe nudge a comet here or there. One day, it might pass close enough to a star to be caught, thawing its oceans, waking whatever sleeps below. Or maybe it will drift forever, unclaimed, unseen, but no less real for it. The quirky tidbit you recall fits too neatly. Some astronomers estimate there may be tens of billions of rogues in our galaxy alone. You're not walking on an exception, you're walking on the rule. You think of yourself, your tiny lifespan, your fragile body, your desperate need for clocks and warmth. In contrast, this planet shrugs off ages. You could perish tomorrow, and it would keep walking its endless road without pause. You could settle, build, even thrive, and in time it would still wander on, carrying your story like a faint fingerprint on its surface. You whisper, "We're all just passengers," and the silence accepts it. Joke number 2 comes unbidden. Guess that makes the galaxy one big bus route. Too bad I forgot exact change. Your boots grow heavy with fatigue, but you walk a little farther. The aurora shimmers weakly, thin veils rising and falling in slow arcs. They remind you of curtains, but no stage waits behind them. Just more dark, more drift. And yet, it doesn't feel empty anymore. The journey itself is the story. The planet doesn't need a sun to matter. It doesn't need a destination to exist. Neither do you. You stop at the edge of another fissure, a final pause. You look down at the crack, then up at the stars, and you laugh softly, almost tenderly. Joke number 3. Well, old friend, at least you never have to deal with Mondays. The sound fades into the void, and you feel lighter, almost free. And so you keep walking. Not because there's anywhere to go, but because walking itself is the answer. The planet drifts, you drift with it. The stars blaze, indifferent yet eternal. And in this endless, homeless dark, you find a strange peace. Wandering doesn't need a destination when wonder itself keeps you warm. And now, let the pace soften. The crunch of your boots fades into silence, and the aurora above grows slow, its colors stretched thin like watercolor bleeding across paper. The stars blur into a softer haze, no longer sharp needles, but a gentle quilt scattered across the ceiling of the night. The planet's surface, so jagged and biting before, eases into smoother lines, like the folds of a blanket pulled over tired shoulders. You breathe out, long and steady. Each exhale turns to frost and drifts away, slower and slower, as though even the air is ready to rest. The cold doesn't feel hostile anymore. It feels quiet, subdued, like the cool of a pillow just turned. Beneath you, the hidden oceans murmur in your imagination, their warmth diffused into the silence, rocking the planet in rhythms you cannot hear. You imagine the life that might stir there, small and patient, drifting in black seas, content without ever knowing stars or suns. Time itself stretches here, lengthening like a yawn. Minutes and hours blend, then dissolve, until only the steady rhythm of your breath remains. In out, each one gentler than the last. The planet drifts on, endlessly, but you no longer feel the chill of its exile. You feel its endurance instead, its quiet defiance, its promise that even without light, existence is enough. That lesson wraps around you like a soft quilt. So let your thoughts dim, let your muscles loosen, let the stars above blur until they are nothing but calm. The rogue world will keep wandering for you. You don't need to follow every step. Just let yourself drift, slow and untroubled, into the same patient night.